I'm a massive fan of The Last of Us Part 1. This game brought a close to the PS3 generation with a huge bang. Even though it was a zombie game, which was kind of being overdone at that point, what really stuck with you from the game were the amazing characters of Ellie and Joel and the relationship that forms between them as they take the treacherous journey across the US. I got the game my senior year in high school, beat it multiple times then, and then pretty much every time I came home from college for break, I'd play it again. At this point, I've probably beaten the whole game over 30 times on the original PS3. So when the news broke about Naughty Dog remaking the game from the ground up, I was actually excited. I thought it might be a way to experience one of my favorite games of all time for the first time again. But, of course, in the wake of the controversial Last of Us Part 2, many people were ready to hop on the Naughty Dog hate train and immediately pass this off as some ripoff. Well, I still had faith in Naughty Dog, so I decided to buy the game at the full $70 price to see what a huge Last of Us fanboy like myself would think. And man, experiencing The Last of Us again did not disappoint. A beautiful presentation, an interesting setting to get lost in, grounded in intense combat, actually well-written and likable characters, a compelling story that will take you on a roller coaster of emotions. One scene you're witnessing the innocence of adolescent benevolence, and the next you're slammed back into the harsh reality that these characters live in. And the bow that ties it all together is the amazing soundtrack, complementing each emotion and tone throughout the experience. But the thing is, you get all of that from the original game. Did this remake really do enough to justify asking $70 for it? Well, let's go over the differences I've noticed while playing through it. The first thing, obviously, is visuals. Character models look great, which I felt really did humanize some of the characters and help me empathize with them even more. Characters like Bill, Sarah, and Tess, and I think this does help the story be even more impactful. Water and reflections look great. I appreciate that most of the mirrors in the game, other than just in the prologue, actually work now. Distant views look much better than the original. I think the destroyed indoor areas and rubble looks much better in this game and was pretty happy with that. The added animations of upgrading your gun and actually being able to see some of the upgrades on the model of the gun felt much more rewarding and encourages exploration more. There were instances in the original where I would see a weird looking NPC, an off looking distant building, or a low res texture, and it would take me out of the immersion for a second. This happens much less in the remake. But it is kind of disappointing when I do see something like this in the remake. One I noticed that I also remembered from the original was how the barbed wire looked so two-dimensional. When they made the original game, they were very deliberate with the lighting, and there are still some points where I prefer the original look over what is in the remake. Also, I'll always prefer the original character models for Ellie and Joel. Another thing is sound. Everything really just sounds better and clearer. I believe they added more ambient sounds like flies and wildlife, which I appreciated, and enemies sound different as well. The infected sounded more infected and gross, and I think it adds to the fear factor. I play on grounded mode, which doesn't have the listening mode enabled, and I actually found I was able to listen for enemy footsteps and hear where they were with the 3D audio. It really made those times where I was low on health and relying on stealth so much more intense. And of course, gameplay. There are smaller changes like enemies being able to see through and shoot you through glass, Joel being able to break windows, and some very, very slight differences in maps. But the main thing is enemies do behave different than in the original. One of the biggest things I noticed is they're able to see so much better. This made clickers more of a threat, and human enemies feel smarter. The human enemies do actively try to find a path to flank you and seem more aggressive at charging when they can. One huge thing I noticed was this game encourages combat over stealth much more than the original. Enemies drop way more ammo than in the original. I rarely found myself in a situation where I didn't have enough ammo to kill all the enemies in the area. It's easier to get seen in the remake, but also more forgiving. Enemies don't feel like they have aimbot anymore on grounded. In the original, the enemies used to do this thing where they would stand there pointing the gun at where you were behind cover, and the moment you showed yourself, you'd be instantly shot. It was extremely frustrating, and thankfully it's gone. They used to also do this thing where they would stay behind cover with their heads peeking out and would not move, so if you were in a position in front of them, when they did that, you basically were going to get spotted no matter what. I haven't noticed it much in the remake. I actually appreciated this focus more on combat. When I play the original, due to the lack of ammo and supplies and the aimbot from the enemies, I felt like stealth was really the only option and memorized paths that I could take. After a few playthroughs, it turned into me just kind of avoiding combat, which felt like I was avoiding the game. But in the remake, I find that I am able to take out a few with stealth, then get spotted, and then am actually forced to play the game and use my skills against a pretty solid AI. All in all, I think the changes and tweaks to the combat make the game more interesting to play through. For example is the beginning here. In the original, you can rush at first and then just crouch by all the enemies before they get into position. I tried to do this in the remake, but they could spot me from far away, so I was forced to improvise and chose to grab one as a shield and try to inch towards my exit as much as I could before making a break for it.
Release him right now! No, fire!
There were some things I was sure they were going to fix in the remake, but was pretty disappointed to find they were still the same. For example, when you're running away from the car with the turret, it basically just feels like luck if you will get hit or not, and I actually got more frustrated with this part in the remake than in the original. Another one I was hoping they would have fixed was during the sniper section. You can make it to a point where the sniper can't see you, but it feels like there's some invisible triggers that let the enemies know exactly where you are, even though you haven't been spotted. But again, overall, I play this game different than I play the original, and I had a better time playing this one. So to answer the real question, is it worth $70? Honestly, even as a huge fan of the original, I don't think it was. They had most of the assets, an engine, the story, the maps, the dialogue, the voice acting, the casting, and even some of the character models already done before even starting this project. This is how much I paid for the original Last of Us back in 2013. Thank you, GameStop. And this also included factions, which I really enjoyed and spent a lot of time playing. Yes, the remake includes Left Behind, but that's like another 3 hours of content. I think what really contributed to me feeling a little disappointed, and it may have contributed to some of the backlash Naughty Dog received, is the way they marketed it. Ground Up Remake was said in every piece of promotional material. They would focus on enemy AI, and really were just trying to sell it by making it sound like it would be a new experience. I honestly thought they were going to implement a lot of the mechanics from Part 2, but I was wrong. The Last of Us is still a great game, but you're still playing almost the same game as back in 2013. The small changes are noticeable to someone like me who has spent way too much time playing the original, but someone who played it once or twice probably won't notice any differences other than better visuals. Obviously, they did this because they wanted an updated experience for any newcomers when the HBO show comes out, and if you haven't played the original, I definitely think it's worth it for you. But really, this probably should have been like $30 to $40. It may have sold better and probably wouldn't have damaged Naughty Dog's reputation like it seems to have done with the $70 price tag. But then again, I'm not too upset that I spent $70 on this project. The gaming industry seems to be getting further and further away from single-player story-driven experiences, so I'm okay with giving money towards The Last of Us, just out of respect for the original. I mean, I paid $40 for 2 tickets to see the Candyman movie for 2 hours of entertainment, and that movie was trash. I've probably spent over 200 hours playing The Last of Us, and actually enjoying that time, so I feel like it's worth it. At least they haven't turned this franchise into the live service of us yet. Naughty Dog has been one of my favorite developers since Uncharted 2, and while I'm a little disappointed with this project, I'm okay with still supporting them as long as this doesn't become a regular thing. So to sum it all up, if you have access to the original or remaster, you might as well just play that again for basically the same experience.